Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Fumbi and this is Potatoes Gang. Today on the show, we discuss Nigerian parastatals. We look at the question, have Nigerian parastatals really delivered? Let's join the gang to discuss more.
Nigeria is a country that has many parastatals trying to solve many problems. But sometimes there's a sense that there isn't a social contract between these agencies of government and the Nigerian people. It comes out very clearly when you look at corruption and look at how big a drain on Nigeria's resources travels through the path of parastatals. Then you look at their essence of being, the purpose, and how many of them have gone far short of achieving the purpose for which they were set up, and yet have created huge bureaucracies that weigh down decision-making in government. It's time to look at parastatals and ask ourselves, are they worth it? How did we even get there with so many parastatals? Very long time ago that dates me, I wrote a PhD thesis in which, looking at how we are governed and economic policy choice, I was talking to leaders of government, and I described what happened in Nigeria in the 70s as a parastatals frenzy. I mean, we're creating parastatals. And I recall interviewing former Secretary of Government of the Federation, Mr. Alice Nayida, of course, Chief Asiodo and co amongst them. And the general feeling was, look, these fellows who were showing direction came out of Harold Lasky's great school, dominance in London in the 50s, commanding heights of the economy in the hands of government, mixed economy. Government really needs to play a role in Fabian socialism at its peak. But at a point in time, there were permanent secretaries who were chairmen of 30, 40 boards of parastatals. There was that many. And many years later, the question is, have they fulfilled the social contract? I don't know what your impressions are, but most of the challenges we're dealing with every day are those parastatals struggling to gain more power rather than to define purpose. So the triumph of power over purpose tends to grind policy implementation to some place where we're not making the kind of progress we should be making. What should we be doing? What are the problems with our parastatals?
The first is the large number of those parastatals. At a time, as the reform effort commenced, there were about 630 agencies of government outside of the core bureaucracy. So what you then had was duplication. With duplication, you had wastage. But over time, they now became avenues for laundering of money, for corruption, excessive corruption. First, we have to then define how many of them do we really need? How many of them are essential? Two, what are their purposes? There are too many of them. So I guess it has to start from that pruning. There have been efforts to prune.
Yeah, several reforms,
efforts to prune, but a lot more still needs to be done. Recently, all of the talk about corruption has been around those agencies. I guess that's where to start with.
Yeah, I see parastatals as basically a child of Nigeria's penchant for outsourcing problems instead of dealing with them. An agency or a department of government or a ministry has a challenge that it should tackle head-on. It creates an agency to help it to deal with it. Police is not functioning well, their investigative capacity is not optimal. Rather than deal with it, you create an EFCC, you create a Federal Road Safety Commission. Before you know it, they become unwieldy to the point that even those in the core ministries are not aware of the number of these parastatals they've created, what they are doing. You only see them during budget defense period. They get their allocations, have their agreement with the National Assembly, and go back and wait for the next financial year to begin. And then you also see the challenge of political will, because we are talking about many reform committees. The most recent one was the Orasanya Committee that recommended pruning them down to a particular number. I think it was at the tail end of Obasanjo's government or Yeradua, and they were supposed to be Jonathan, and it was supposed to be implemented. And what happened? Jonathan couldn't do it while he was there. As soon as the new government came in, they did away with it. Even the recommendations of terminal number of years that people will stay as directors in some of these agencies, which Obasanjo started implementing. Now all of them are, nobody is following them. So two things there is that if you want to deal with it, we should face them squarely instead of outsourcing them. And then when we identify a problem, we deal with them. And we also have to challenge ourselves. Parastatals, are they really the kind of organs or departments we need to run bureaucracy in the 21st century? We are now in an era of lean government. We can't keep creating a lot of these parastatals.
It's interesting that part of what brought us to where we are is supposed to be the structural adjustment program. And a workshop on structural adjustment programs that took place in Nairobi around the 1986-87 period came out with a conclusion. What will be required from these reforms is not the disappearance of government, but trim, very effective government. Now, what I've seen happen since that conference is that they've gotten bigger. These parastatals are seeking more power, consolidating, we're going. What, again, was the purpose of all the trouble if the results? For me, it seems like it's mainly politics. I don't know if you follow the biggest challenge in change of government or anything. Appointments. Yeah. Oh my God, we have not been given something. We've not been appointed with. Ad nauseam, everywhere I go, the complaint is that we've not been given something, we've not been appointed.
5,000 jobs to fill have not been filled.
Yeah. Is the country going to be a country of those who run government? Every one of those boards that you put these people on, what do they go to do? Most of them have no real value that they contribute to those boards, but they see those boards as their path to some largesse. The chief executive of those boards cannot function because they are constantly looking over their heads to take care of these characters on their boards. So, how do we deliver the gains of democracy to the people?
I feel that parastatals are the key factors in the economy because they are like the consultants. I mean, the minister is the political head of the ministry. And you have the PAMSEX and administration. Execution should come to parastatals. But the problem we have in Nigeria is that you find that 4 or 5 parastatals are doing the same thing. So then the issue of power comes into play. Yeah. Because what they're trying to fight for relevance. And I guess it's politics, and they have to create jobs for stakeholders. Yeah. If it is lean, it's more effective. But I've been part of a person before when I was in state government, and you realize that you are talking to this group of people, and I just talk to the same people on the same project. And then when you go to the end, the political end, it says people should come together and do it and sort it out.
My view is that actually many of these parastatals are viable enough to be privatized. Imagine if you privatize NMPC, NIMASA, and all of those. Government wouldn't have this bazaar of money to engage in patronage system that drive all the creation of all these agencies. In fact, I hear that there's actually this among the politicians. They send people to go and look for the parastatals that are viable, and then we go and lobby to be appointed into them. They go run it down, and they leave again and start looking for other ones to.
Okay, because I think they should be generating.
We're going to come to that in a second. It's a compact, social compact. What Margaret Thatcher did in the UK. How can we rethink that whole process? Let's go to a break. When we come back, and we'll talk to it.
We all acknowledge that Nigerian parastatals are too many to number. And sometimes there is an overlap in function and a triumph of power over purpose. But it's important that we find out what people really think. Let's go to the streets to find out more.
When the government is seen that way, it will be reduced. We don't want people that are just striving to get there.
For example, look at the VAT. If you are taxing a street that has quite a few industries to come and pay a certain amount before you can help them to develop their road or repair their road, how do you leverage that? Meanwhile, you're telling them to come and bring some certain amount so that you can add it up to them. Whereas they are paying you a tax for that. You know, it's not fair. For me, I would suggest that if they are paying their tax at the same time, and then you know that they are paying their tax, instead of putting the burden on Lagos State government, oh, Lagos State government, come and help us do this, come and help us fix it. Of course, since they are paying their tax, you can go there and know, okay, how many industries are here? Look at them and say, okay, let's do this for you. At least it helps you.
Speak on the Ministry of Works. Actually, I would base them on 40-something% because of what they're doing. But in the first instance, I was shocked that Fashola was actually appointed the Minister of Works as a lawyer. They should have picked an engineer, like the former engineer that was there before, who did a fantastic work, and let him just continue the thing he has started. Because of the change of government, the effort that the guy had put in actually ended, because with the new person coming in, it just cut the job. So everything, our roads are bad. Housing, you build a house and you say it's for the low-cost housing, and you're putting it at 25 million.
I just want to talk about Ministry of Power, because like we all know this, I don't need to ask, I don't need to talk about, even the question can be answered by itself, because if you go out to every area in the state, let's say Lagos State, you know that what you find there is just everybody using generator. Every house you go there, you find a generator there. Even offices and companies, you find a generator there. And to make it worse, you find out that even the government himself, they are even making it possible for everybody, as in these so-called big companies like, I will not mention names. That means that the government is not even doing anything to improve power.
The challenge of getting government to be more effective, including and especially working through parastatals, is really, in many ways, is a challenge of establishing clear service compacts in which stakeholders have a really dominant role. Because part of the problem in parastatals is who really owns them. Yeah. If the stakeholders, the people that they are servicing, are the ones who really own them, and you know that if you don't work, their interests will suffer, then it's easier to manage them. Today, because they're really, as we used to say when we were children, beast of no gender, you know, nobody owns you. They just go out there and they are significantly at the whims of people who have nominated their directors and executives, and they're just there to take care of themselves. They do a few perfunctory things in the interest of society, but in the main, it's a really self-serving thing. How can we create service compacts in which we provide leadership, governance, and all of that for those parastatals to people that they are set up to service? What will be the challenges of doing that, and how can we do that? I know we've had this whole Servicom arrangement for many years, and I'm not so sure what the impact has been.
There has been no impact.
I think it's important to actually revisit that whole Servicom concept, because in conceptualization, it was very, very
Made
good
no
at the
sense.
time and with a lot of prospects. But like everything in Nigeria, government creates important agencies, but then refuse to fund them.
Yeah.
Because within the first 2 or 3 years that they worked with, I think that was when Aldo Bay, the former journalist, was there heading it, and I was one of the consultants that worked at the security sector. And we went around all the agencies, working with them to develop a service charter, you know, through which citizens can hold them accountable. But after the 3 years of defeat funding, there was no funding from government. And the thing, if you go there now, the bureaucracy is still there. People are still drawing salaries. They are still changing tables and chairs every year. But in terms of the real work that it was originally conceived to do, it's not doing it. And that is the same thing with all the other parastatals, the important ones. But then those that in public view are not very useful get funded. How they do it, we don't know.
I think that I mean the blame is both on government and parastatals, because I know that if you set up an agency, there should be a take-off grant which is paid back in X amount of years, and that agency should be fully funded by whatever revenue they generate. But then you find out that government sets up an agency to fund it is a problem. So at some point the mission is no way to fund anymore. Because it's okay, I'm funding this, take off that X amount of naira.
But they continue to pay salaries.
Yeah.
Because that's the most important thing
They continue to
for
travel,
government in our environment.
study tours,
Pay salaries.
consultancy.
So it's a foundation that's already cracked already.
Yeah.
Then, because I believe that if most agencies are run by themselves and paying their own salaries and sending revenue to the government, it won't be so attractive anymore.
One of the big problems is that we have not learned the art of sunset legislation. In sunset legislation, when we are creating an agency of government and we have clarity on what its mission is supposed to be, we say this agency should die in 10 years, should have finished its assignment.
Yeah.
So 10 years from now, it has stopped to exist.
Yeah.
Or this agency should in 4 years be self-funding, and these are benchmarks from now to year 4 that it must meet. And if it has not met it, change management, do this, do. But we don't do sunset legislation. There are so many agencies in this country that died a quarter of a century ago, but people are being paid salaries. Those, and because we do incremental budgeting, when we get to budget time, we just mark everybody's whatever up by whatever
Either addition or reduction.
10%, 12%, 15%. When the idea, I mean, some of us were behind the whole idea of going this time to zero-based budgeting. When we were suggesting it, it was to provide an opportunity to kill some of these kinds of parastatals. Because in zero-based budgeting, what you do is now justify everything. I was particularly distressed when 2 or 3 months after the conversation started, we were told that we're going to a zero-based budget. Can't do a zero-based budget without nearly 2 or 3 years of work. So there clearly is need for something to help bring us back to a zero base, to deal with all of these parastatals. Are they really worth keeping around? If we can justify them, what must be done to take them away from permanent dependence on the public purse? And what value should they be created so that we can tax that value and justify their going? And again, one of the things that I like to bring into this conversation is the role of specific use taxes. Agencies that are supposed to have a certain purpose should be funded by specific use taxes, where if their purpose runs out, there won't be a tax generated from the specific use. Give an example, highway maintenance. You say 5% of gasoline tax can, of gasoline prices will go to maintaining highways. If X number of potholes are found in this stretch, the users of the roads being those who do the monitoring, then this parastatal has not met its purpose. It must
Wind down.
When you have those kinds of things, you will, I think, find running government a lot more purpose-oriented.
Government still remains opaque to most of Nigeria. That's why you have these parastatals. There was one that was hived off a privatization agency and supposed to do some things like concession and all that. They've not done
concession,
one.
And most parastatals are run by politicians, not technocrats anyways. Yeah. So
no, even where they have technocrats.
The point chairman was a technocrat.
Yes, the point is the political will to carry out the purpose for that parastatal is not even the fault of the technocrats. They may, you may have put together a team and they're set to go, but do they then have the political will to do what they have set out? Because if for some of them, as you know, agencies of government work to implement the policies that have been enunciated. If there is no policy, they just sit there, collect salaries, and go.
But so, there's also the issue of government honoring concessionary agreements. Because I remember about the time that the agency was created, if my memory is anything to go by, was Dr. Mansour Mohammed Ahmed.
Mansour Ahmed was CEO.
Chenekon was the chairman. And it was around the time the Murtala Mohammed Airport 2, where a particular company invested so much. In the middle of it, the agreement was cancelled, and the investment is a shadow of itself today. Even the extension, the hotel they wanted to build to support that investment, they couldn't do it because their bankers withdrew because the agreement has been.
This is really frustrating because sometime last year I was traveling in Australia, Infrastructure Australia. And even the G20 Infrastructure Hub, which is based in Melbourne, had come, and they told me they came to Nigeria. They met with people in this agency. There's private money available at plenty to do infrastructure. Yeah. But they say they can't even manage to get the people to engage with them properly. They just felt frustrated. So is it that we don't want our country to be developed? It's a very strange thing.
It's personal interest trumping public interest.
But I said at times too, I don't get it, because if this was done in your tenure, it is your glory.
Your glory, yeah. It's a certain short-sightedness that says unless I can award a contract and get my 10% now, don't worry about it. Even if the state is going to be the most backwater in the world, doesn't matter. But what can we award now and get our own? So short-sighted. Anyhow, we have to go. But I guess our prayer is let everybody get born again in this business. And it's not a religious born again. Born again in terms of
thinking Nigeria.
Not just thinking Nigeria, very importantly, but thinking immortality. Legacy.
Execution.
How am I remembered when I'm gone? And only achieving an execution framework will make that happen for us. We'll see us next time.
To be more effective as a country, it is important that each parastatal is functioning to its optimal level. We may also want to consider privatizing some parastatals and removing the stress on the public fund. Well, that's all that we have time for on today's show. We thoroughly hope that you've enjoyed yourself. Please join us by following us on all our social media platforms that are displayed on your screen right now. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, that is @Patitos Gang TV, and catch up on previous episodes that you've missed. Till next time, my name is Fumbi Ogunbawo. Take care.